In this video, we are going to talk all about Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling is her comments on social media kind of affecting the franchise. We're going to talk about Disney and their kind of mission to kind of remove problematic elements out of their attractions. We have a lot to talk about today. We have a very special guest up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. Today, we're talking all about Harry Potter. We're talking about Disney, kind of removing problematic elements of the attractions. But we are joined by a very special guest. First time on this show, Ashton The Slytherin. Ashton, I absolutely love your YouTube channel. You are so passionate about Harry Potter, and it's contagious. I absolutely adore it. If you could let everybody at home know where they can kind of find you on social media and kind of give a little bit of a backstory as to kind of what you do in this space.
Yeah, of course. So obviously I'm Ashton Slytherin on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and I sort of think my place here has like a different sort of range. So I definitely go over many different topics, but one of my favorite topics to talk about is obviously Harry Potter. And the reason for that is that I think, you know, there's so many different types of wonderful fans in the world. It just so happens that like the Harry Potter bug sort of hit me very early at a very early age, at the age of 5 years old. And from then on out, I've known all the lore, all the history. I have read everything you can think of when it comes to the biographies of J.K. Rowling. So I can definitely go into deep dives of what every creature, every professor, I know the backstory of every family. So Harry Potter is one of those things that's very near and dear to my heart because I think the elements that go into the world building are just so wonderful and so interesting, and you really just have no end to it. I especially think the franchise itself has built this amazing fandom around it, and I think we've entered sort of a world where the fans have definitely taken over in some of the best ways possible. So I'm very excited about that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Ashton. And if you can kind of let everyone know where they can find you, like on YouTube and what have you.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I'll also link it down below.
Yeah, of course. So on YouTube, I am Ashton the Slytherin. On TikTok, I'm Ashton the Slytherin. And on Instagram, I'm Ashton the Slytherin. And on Twitter, I am the Ashton Blaze. Yeah, so if you like want to talk about all things Harry Potter, horror movies, Disney, all that sort of fun stuff, theme parks, that's where you'll find me.
100%. And Ashton's passion is contagious, absolutely contagious. So definitely links down below, subscribe, follow. She is amazing, absolutely amazing. Ashton, thank you so much for coming on today. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And right over here, we got our producer, Dre, Mr. Vashkai, host of the Freshly Squeezed show here on OG55. Welcome back, Dre.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me on, good sir. If you want to go ahead and follow me, you can go ahead and do so right down there at Vashkai. Like I said, trying to get to 1,000, so I think I'm pretty close to the goal here. Pretty close to the goal. Last time I checked, it was 95, something like that. So you guys have been great supporting that. Like I said, we are going to do a special giveaway, something or another with when we do hit 1,000. So I think that'll be really fun for the channel viewers at home. So go ahead and do that. If you want to go ahead and see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. There you go.
There we go. Our first
Star Wars is beginning.
Sorry. Exactly. That's
it. Exactly. You know, Ashton, you might appreciate it. You're from California. You told me you kind of grew up around Disneyland.
Yeah.
We kind of did like a special like OG 55 intro. Mm-hmm. It's very Electrical Parade. I'm going to play it for you.
Oh my gosh, my heart.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to all who come to this happy place,
welcome to Orange Grove 55.
a little bit, right?
Oh my gosh.
It had to be done.
It's good stuff. It's interesting, Ashton, when you were talking about your intro and you were mentioning how the community surrounding Harry Potter had become very fan centric.
Yeah.
I'd heard that before, that it was kind of like the fans have kind of taken over this franchise, but I didn't quite know what that meant. We've had a woman on the channel before named Kenna, who is a big Harry Potter fan herself, and she has talked about this before, and I didn't quite know what that meant. Could you go ahead, before we get into the proper discussion, could you elaborate on that a little bit more and what you mean by that?
So we've entered a time where I think we are seeing, because the thing about Harry Potter is it's so different from so many different other universes, right? Because it expands so much to different countries, different languages. You can have different types of witches and wizards. There's so many different creatures. There's so many different story building elements that you can actually use in the Harry Potter universe to build your own story with, which is why we see so many different types of fan fiction out there, and so many different type of people who will go to the theme parks in robes and full costume, like myself. I am one of those people for sure. And you have so many different people who just know the lore and the history and will go into so many deep dives. And it's gotten to the point where now fans are sort of making their own theories about the world. They're making their own comments and opinions about what's happening. And this is both a good and it can sometimes be like one of those situations where you sort of get like the fan fictions. For example, I am not a fan of whenever people try to claim they want to date characters like Draco Malfoy, because that to me is very problematic. But again, it's fan fiction. You can change whatever you want. But we've also entered a world where I think, for example, the studios that are making the Harry Potter films, they've definitely sort of, I think, separated themselves from the original content, the original books that inspired the Harry Potter films. And it's sort of led to this thing where I think a lot of fans will make excuses for the Fantastic Beasts films specifically, because it takes away itself from the lore so much. For example, there is no reason Minerva McGonagall should exist before the year 1935, which she is born, and yet somehow she's a professor in the 1920s at Hogwarts. There's no reason the manticores should look like baby lobster fish things. Like, there's so many things that I take issue with the Fantastic Beasts series, and it's clear to me the studios realize that the Harry Potter franchise is now so marketable, they can pretty much slap the name Harry Potter on anything and sell it. And we're getting to a point where I think they're so desperate to write new stories and to sell more movies to fans and sell more merchandise. They're no longer following the proper, and it's going to the point too where even J.K. Rowling, she says that she's writing part of the Fantastic Beasts scripts, but I honestly want to know how much exactly, because there's so much in the Fantastic Beasts series and even Cursed Child that does not line up with the original Harry Potter universe. And there's so much that does not line up at all. And a lot of fans are pointing this out. But there's also a lot of fans who are sort of just going along with it. And at least fans like me who have, praised Harry Potter for so long because how meticulous it is, how much everything had lined up so perfectly in all 7 books, is now sort of just falling apart. And I think a lot of more fans need to speak up about this, because there's so many fan-made films. There's so many people who are writing amazing pieces of work that could work so much better than what the Warner Brothers Studios is unfortunately giving us.
Do you think?
And that's where I kind of stand in. Oh, sorry.
Well, no, no, you're completely fine. I don't want to step on you at all. So don't worry about that. I mean, do you think OG? And I think this is where Warner Brothers come from, right?
Yeah.
We have a built-in audience for our this franchise, right? So let's go ahead and let's do something that appeals to them, but we have to go ahead and manipulate it a little bit for the general audience in order to get those big box office numbers. The problem, though, is that when you do that with some of these big franchises that have, like you said, Ashton, so much established lore, so much established passion from these various fan bases, that with that kind of manipulation from the studios in order to make it geared towards the general audience, you lose that built-in franchise, which was the whole reason you did this stuff in the first place. OG, do you think that's kind of where maybe Warner Brothers has kind of gone astray with Harry Potter?
Yeah, I think when it comes to this stuff, I think the best approach for the studios, from the studio standpoint, from the executive standpoint, is to really kind of back off and let the let the creatives do their job, right? So let J.K. Rowling, let the people that know this stuff kind of handle this. The problem with the current structure in terms of like the studio creator relationship, a lot of times these executives get like in the mix and they meddle. And that's when you come into problems. And we've seen it with Disney too. I mean, we've seen it with Disney a lot, you know. You really have to trust it because look, here's the thing. Harry Potter, this franchise, it has become a cultural phenomenon because of the original vision for from J.K. Rowling. You don't want to go in there now and start to try to interject things like Ashton said, making things that don't like inserting things in Fantastic Beasts that don't make sense in the timeline just for sellability, right? You have to that's not the way to go. And I think that that's a major problem for these franchises. And it's not just Harry Potter. I think a lot of these big studios don't understand when to back off and just let these creatives do their job. Now, obviously there's a limit to that. Obviously you have to rein that into some degree. As a studio, you can't just have a free for all. Mm-hmm. But I do think there needs to be a little bit more freedom when it comes to these creatives in terms of trusting their judgment. A lot of these franchises that these studios kind of inherit are major franchises, very successful franchises for a reason. And once you start meddling into that and you start to change things, it gets kind of ugly in a lot of ways, I think.
Well, it all drops off, right? It's like you want to appeal towards this general audience, but you necessarily don't appeal to them fully. Especially in the case of Fantastic Beasts, I think this is kind of a victim of that. You didn't appeal to them fully, but then you changed so much that you didn't appeal to the built-in audience fully. And I think that's where Harry Potter was like $1 billion franchise. I mean, whenever a movie would come out, $1 billion hit right off the bat. And honestly, it was reflected in Warner Brothers' balance sheet whenever they would produce a film. It was just automatic cash. When Fantastic Beasts came out, though, I mean, you saw those numbers drop just off a precipitous clip. And I think that speaks to that a little bit. Ashton, is that kind of am I on base here? Are we on base here? Or are you
absolutely? And I think with Fantastic Beasts had its quirks that I really did enjoy. But once they got into Crimes of Grindelwald, the Crimes of Grindelwald still has not answered my biggest question about Grindelwald. Is one, what exactly his crimes were? Were they before, they had to be before Fantastic Beasts because everyone knows him as this dark, evil wizard. And then when you get into the second film, Crimes of Grindelwald, that question is still never answered, what those crimes to make him so evil were. And the second thing is that when your villain is the guy who wants to stop the Holocaust from happening, you might want to rethink who your villain is. And so this forces a whole new movie to come out, basically making Grindelwald look 10 times worse than he did in the first film, where he basically sacrifices this creature that looks like, I don't know, it looks like a goat, basically. I forget the name of the actual creature, but he sacrifices it, brings it back to life to use it as his own personal tool. There's a lot of weird witchcraft stuff we've never really seen in the Harry Potter universe before. So they basically go out their way to make him look 1,000 times darker than he ever did in any of the films prior. And it's all just one giant mess. Basically, every film being made is the answer for the issues people had. And I wouldn't be surprised if a fourth film came out just to explain why Minerva McGonagall is there in the first place. I guarantee it. You heard it here. Is that they're going to go make a fourth film, make up this whole crazy scenario involving time turners probably, which really makes me angry because there is very strict rules with time turners in the Harry Potter universe. You can only take them up to so many hours. And when you go back, you still age, right? You still age over time. So that wouldn't make sense. But I know they're going to use time turners. I know they're going to mess with that when they shouldn't. Again, it's just one of those things where Warner Brothers does not listen to their fan base, does not know the universe properly, and is constantly trying to backtrack itself and make up for itself. And this is a lot of things we see in The Cursed Child as well. The Cursed Child has so many elements that could have been different. One, Voldemort should not have a child. That, to me, makes absolute no sense. I definitely see Bellatrix being obsessed with him, not because she's in love with him. I never got the vibe that Bellatrix was in love with him. I got the vibe that she was obsessed with him because he meant power, and Bellatrix wanted power. Right. I never sensed Voldemort ever participating in anything. This is a family show, I'm guessing. Anything of physical form with Bellatrix, even have a child. That makes no sense to me. The Time Turner thing is obviously like the biggest argument in Cursed Child. The fact that Trolley Lady is some weird, hideous monster to keep children from leaving the train. And also, if the worst thing you have, right, if in the Cursed Child, they basically show us a world where Voldemort takes over. And the world is basically Voldemort has now taken over the Ministry of Magic to the point where a few muggles will die off here and there, and the ministry is paid off so that they don't say anything about it. And Hogwarts has a special V-Day where everyone has to perform a very cringy dance for Voldemort. If that's the worst that Voldemort has given us, what was the trouble of destroying Hogwarts in the process? Because there's a lot of, like, when I pictured Voldemort taking over the world, I envisioned slavery. I envisioned mass murder across the world. I imagined the worst of the worst could happen. And in Cursed Child, they make him sound like any other politician. Honestly, like I was really disappointed. There's just so many things that are coming in the world of Harry Potter that no one asked for and no one wanted. Yeah. Honestly, there are fan fictions I have read. I'm pretty sure the fan fiction I wrote when I was 12 years old, which I've thought about honestly reading on my own channel. I basically rewrote all 7 Harry Potter books, like 70,000 words each, because I had no friends at the time. I still have no friends, honestly. Where honestly, it's through the perspective of a Slytherin student the same years as Harry Potter. And the entire time, it's just her perspective, her thinking, this is very unfair. This is not okay. Why is Gryffindor getting all these last-minute points? That is more canon. My fan fiction I wrote when I was 12 years old is more canon than the Fantastic Beasts series in Cursed Child. There is no reason Cursed Child should make absolutely, like, Cursed Child reads like a really bad fan fiction. Really badly written. And I think that's the thing that comes into us fans look at this and we're like, what is this monstrosity? We didn't ask for this. We don't want this.
I'm getting almost like Vietnam flashbacks of like the sequel trilogy right now. When you're going through this, it's like, oh my God, a lot of that stuff happened there, you know? It's like they were making up for the last movie.
The Star Wars sequels could have been fantastic if Finn was the main character.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's all Disney had to do, right?
Yeah.
That's all they had to do. You got this guy who is an ex-stormtrooper who is like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to kill. This isn't who I am. Quits being a stormtrooper and runs off with Poe. The series should have been about Finn and Poe saving the galaxy. And this guy who is an ex-stormtrooper has all the knowledge of the dark side, all of the knowledge of like how the inner workings of
the
Empire, and he could have been able to stop it because he knows all the inner workings. He knows how the Empire works. Instead, you have this Rey character who's basically the female version of Luke Skywalker. And frankly, I don't like Luke Skywalker that much as a character already, so it made it very hard for me to like Rey. No offense, but Luke Skywalker has no personality. I am sorry, but I watched that film as a kid, and the reason I like Anakin so much more is because he's whiny, he's bratty, but at least he shows some character. Yeah. Luke Skywalker, the entire time, is like this the entire time. Like, he has no idea what's going on. He's wide-eyed. He's a little confused the entire time. He's kind of just winging it the entire time. I honestly watched the original Star Wars, and when he's explaining to Leia that they're siblings, Leia's just like, I sort of already knew. Then why did you kiss him?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Excuse me? This is why I could never get into Star Wars, because J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter has more continuity than the original Star Wars series, up until they wrote The Cursed Child and the Fantastic Beasts series. Then it just all went off a cliff, basically. But the reason I could never get into Star Wars is because the continuity is just not there. It does not exist. I like the prequels of Star Wars, and a lot of people give me trash for that. But I do, because it was one of those things, again, I was like 5 or 6 years old, so I grew up on them. But I just remember sitting in the theater thinking to myself, you know what? Anakin kind of has a point. Like, maybe not killing off the younglings, that's not a good idea. But this whole idea that Anakin can't get married to Padme, when it turns out Obi-Wan Kenobi was off doing the exact same thing behind closed doors. But, no, you can't do this, Anakin. It's against the laws of being a Jedi.
Right.
Y'all are hypocrites. It's no wonder he went to the dark side. I don't blame him. I do not blame him.
You know, Ashton, you are 100% correct. I agree with you on the Luke Skywalker thing and the Anakin Skywalker thing, because I grew up on the original trilogy. I was a little older when the prequels came out, but I completely agree with you. I think Anakin Skywalker is a much more interesting character. I really, really do. I've always felt that I was way more excited to see Anakin back with Kenobi in this new Kenobi series than I was about seeing Luke in the sequel trilogy.
Here's the thing. I'm really critical of the Kenobi series because I feel like young Leia, I think, is adorable.
Yeah,
I am not. A lot of people are hating on young Leia, right? But it could have been done better. For example, the chase scenes could have been done better. The fighting scenes could have done way better.
Yeah.
What I don't like is sort of this, and this is kind of like where I cringe at the fans a little bit when people are like, Obi-Wan Kenobi should have been with Leia, should have been with Padme the entire time. This is how it should have been. No, that should have never happened. Fans are weird on the internet, man. Like, I'm a pretty cringy fan myself, but there are fans that write the strangest stuff where I'm just like, what? What I have issue with the Kenobi series the most of all is that they sort of reintroduced Anakin by taking him away from the Darth Vader form. And I didn't like that too much. I think Anakin did die once he became Darth Vader. And they sort of reintroduced Anakin in this series. I didn't like that very much. Again, I'm a huge fan of continuity. Yeah. And once that goes out the window, I get angry. I turn into She-Hulk basically without the twerking.
That's good stuff.
If the twerking's canon now, I guess. I don't know. I never grew up. I don't understand the She-Hulk series completely. That's a whole other rant I could go on. One, the CGI annoys me. Two, I'm just offended that they think that she's a strong female character as a woman, right? Because everyone who supports the She-Hulk series is like all the men saying they hate it because they don't understand what women want. Well, I'm a woman, and to hear that She-Hulk is somehow a strong female character is kind of insulting because you got these amazing characters in Marvel. Gamora is my absolute favorite. Pepper from Iron Man is an absolute badass, right? You got Scarlet Witch, who, I'm still critical of, but at least she's got more personality. And then you've got Black Widow, who's got this amazing backstory. Right. She-Hulk's got no backstory, no personality. She's kind of just there. She's she's basically every girl boss cardboard cutout. And that to me is insulting. She's got an RBG bobblehead. She's twerking. She's getting after work shots, and that's her, and she's on Tinder. That's her whole personality. It's really frustrating to me because I'm like, this is supposed to represent women, and you're gonna say she's the strong female character of all these other strong female characters Marvel has already given us. Are you freaking kidding me? 100%. And I'm saying this as someone who identifies as a feminist because I don't like when I have, when I have a strong female character that's represented to me, I want to know their backstory, their personality. I want to know what they represent. And to She-Hulk, she kind of just represents every white woman. every typical white woman. It's like a cardboard cutout. Honestly, She-Hulk to me looks like she was, she looks like she was drawn by a Fox News anchor. She is the most. That's what I don't get. I don't get how feminists and liberal women of all people are backing this character up because she's not a strong female character. She looks like something Fox News drew. She really does. She looks like something.
She's like a caricature almost.
Mm-hmm. She looks like a caricature of every female talk show host to me. And that's what I don't like because there are so many things you could have done to make an amazing backstory for an amazing character. And they changed the backstory to something else. And to me, it only made her look worse. Because I like when I see a character, male or female, go through struggle. I like
right.
to see that because it humanizes them. It's why I love the villain to hero character arcs like Loki, Snape, Wanda, all of these different characters, Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because it humanizes them. It makes us see our own faults within ourselves, with the wrongdoings we've done. It helps us recognize and have empathy for these characters that made mistakes. That's why I don't like She-Hulk. They're putting her on this high pedestal that she doesn't deserve. That's why I don't like her. Anyway, we went off topic again, but
No, that's fine.
I've been having this conversation with OG actually. Now I want to get your opinion on this because I think this is very fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Ashton, do you think with the Disney's material specifically, we see, I don't know, from my standpoint, a lot of cookie cutter female archetypes?
Yes, I do not understand how so many feminists are backing this up. It's very frustrating. It's very annoying. There's so many different types of women that you could base strong female characters off of in history that are inspiring, brilliant, fought in wars. There's so many different women who have really fought fascism, imperialism, have gone through struggles and life situations that we can look throughout history and our timeline and think that is a real interesting person I want to make into a character. And instead, we're making like these cardboard cutouts of what, again, look like to me like talk show hosts. And it's I think we've become so far away. The average person has become so far away from what Hollywood sees as an everyday person. Yeah. They just basically, okay, well, She-Hulk to me looks like a female version of Ryan Seacrest.
Yeah, totally.
That's what she looks like to me. She's basically every typical upper middle class white woman.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she looks like to me.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
Not interesting to me. I want to see a character who's gone through struggle. I want to see a character who's fought something and fought for something bigger than herself. That's what matters to me as a woman who wants stronger female characters. I am so sick of people. I see, like, I'll go on TikTok, right? I'll see a lot of people who are like, all these people criticizing She-Hulk are just angry white men because they don't get it. Well, I'm a woman who wants more personality in my strong female characters. And I do not understand how so many feminists are falling for this shtick of, oh, it's the female version, therefore buy it. I don't get how we're falling for this shtick every single time. They're basically taking what we care about, right? They're basically saying, okay, we made the female version of this feminist. Here you go. Are you happy now? And we're falling for it. No, if we're going to be given a strong female character, I want the same type of work into the backstory. I want the same type of work that goes into the personality. Because the thing is, the fact that we're looking at characters like She-Hulk and putting her side by side, Iron Man and Hulk and Captain America, and not thinking to ourselves, wow, they're really not putting that much effort into She-Hulk and other female characters. We should be pissed off that they're not putting as much effort into this. Instead, they're basically smacking a female face on and saying, here you go, feminists. Here you go, women. Be happy. Liberation.
Right, 100%.
No, it's cheaply done. And the fact that we're still making excuses for this really makes me angry because that's not representation to me. If anything, that's just laziness in part of the studio.
Well, that's 100%. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, a lot of these studios, and Disney especially, right? What they do is they think like, okay, I'll just kind of, we'll just kind of like, as a studio, we'll give you a female character, and there you go. We did our due diligence. We have representation. But what a lot of people seem to miss, and what you understand, Ashton, is that like the quality matters, right? Like
and feminists, so many feminists, comic book characters, and fans of the show aren't seeing that, and that's what frustrates me. Because if we're fighting for representation, we should be fighting for the same effort and the same writing and the same work that goes into these characters as the male characters, and we're not getting that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
This is not a win for women. Like, this show is not a win for feminists. I do not understand how people aren't seeing that.
It's almost like they were, and there are definitely some maybe more ideological types, right, within the writers' rooms and so forth. And I understand they want to we'll get rid of the old tropes, but really you just replace them with new ones. This is
an old trope. That's the funny thing. Is they're basically make this. No, seriously, this female character is an old trope that has been overused over and over and over again. The only difference is that this is an old trope that hasn't been used in superhero movies. This is an old trope that has been used in every single rom-com and sitcom that I am so sick of representation. You know what? The SNL Black Widow video, like where they basically make a chick flick trailer for the Black Widow movie, that SNL video is basically what She-Hulk is. The SNL video making fun of the fact that Black Widow would have been made into a rom-com is basically what got turned into She-Hulk.
That's interesting.
That is what happened. That's why I don't understand how She-Hulk is getting all of this rep from women around the world. I'm like, they're laughing at us when they made this video, this series. They're laughing at us.
And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned Wanda. See, that's an example, and I've been a big proponent of Wanda. Vash can vouch for me. I love that character. I do. And because Wanda has been through some shit. Wanda has been through a lot of shit. And she's got a great character arc, great character growth. She's not out there twerking or doing whatever.
I don't even care about the twerking. That's the funny bit. Everyone's mad about the twerking right now. I will say this. The twerking sort of just adds to it. It's like, really? Like, you could have written anything in. You could have written her a good backstory, a good personality, something interesting for women to relate to.
Yeah.
And instead you gave her twerking, which to me is, it's again, if she was twerking on top of actually having a backstory and a personality, and like the twerking was just like there, on the side, I wouldn't care as much. It's the fact they basically they didn't write anything else in, plus the twerking. It's almost like the twerking was meant to make up for their lack of writing.
Yeah.
100%.
That's what makes me angry.
Go ahead.
Well, no, we're just going to try to appeal to the what is the TikTok generation, or the kind of what is it, viewers at home, which would twerk themselves. Oh, look, you can see yourself in her doing this. So much. What is it? I guess to appeal to, or whatever. It's a weird thing because. Yeah, I do agree with you. They have used this trope before. I guess my point is like they've created all new tropes that we see, not just with She-Hulk, embodied in She-Hulk, but we see these characteristics across a wide spectrum of female characters within these kind of Disney products, whether they come from Star Wars, Marvel, and so forth.
Disney animation has really been big on creating
it's
new
just
tropes.
like they're. Yeah, you switch out the names, but you give like a kind of a character sheet, right, of their kind of personality traits, and they're indistinguishable from one to the other. Right. And it's really unfortunate because we used to really have, I would think, really dynamic characters, really characters that would stand out, but now they're inseparable from the rest and really forgettable as a result. And I think I agree with you, Ashton. It's a little bit unfair because it's like, yeah, we're starting to see female representation, which is great, but representation just by itself isn't good enough. It really is the quality of that representation. And I think I agree with you, Ashton. I think they really are kind of falling off on that. And it really is unfortunate. Disney's not the only, what is it? The studio doing this. Yeah. There's obviously others. But you're right, and it really is. It's unfair. I do agree.
It's yeah, it is. It is unfair. It's very much. I just feel like a lot of these studios, and Disney included, maybe even Disney especially, they think that like to your point, Ray, like it's like just having the female character is enough, right? And we'll touch upon this because we're going to dive into the parks, and I think this kind of pertains to some of the park stuff, but like just having the female character, or even just the representation of various races and what have you, that's enough. Forget quality. As long as we give you a character that this race or whatever can relate to, or this gender can relate to, that's good enough. But
the problem is, here's the thing: diversity in TV shows and movies is important. Representation is important.
Right.
As someone who's autistic, when I finally saw an autistic character that wasn't represented as an annoying, babbling idiot, it really made me happy because it was actually okay. We actually have a character, that applies to. I feel like I can see myself in, because the way the media has represented autism and people with autism is so frustrating for years and years and years. And it's very rarely we actually do get to see a character that properly represents what the experience is, right? So I do understand when people say representation matters, because it does. The problem is that these studios, they're writing off these characters of different races, different backgrounds, different sexual orientations, different gender identities, and they are just making them into cartoon characters. They're using all of these tropes that are, one, sometimes offensive, usually offensive, and two, very often just wrong. Just like not what it is at all. You can tell the person writing these characters does not even know what they're talking about. And it's very frustrating. And so, like, for example, a great example of this is when they basically turned Miles, who is technically Spider-Man, they basically made the Thor version of Miles. And when this comic book came out, the Miles version of Thor, they had like graffiti all over Asgard. They had him in like Timberland boots. They had him say things like by the power of my fade. Like these just really racist, stereotypical things that applied to him, that this artist thought, oh, this will definitely appeal to the Black community. And there was so much backlash against it. Thank God people said something about it. People just didn't stand by and say, oh yeah, this is so great representation. I'm really glad people were like, no, dude, we cannot make this into a comic book. This is horrible. And the artist came out and apologized and said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was trying to, use representation. But at the same time, it's like, look, if we want representation, we actually have to get people from these communities and from these backgrounds to come out and actually say what they want to see in these comic books and these TV shows and these movies, and actually share their experience and say, this is like what, I would like to see as someone from this community, as someone from this identity. That would be honestly very helpful. And I think we do need to see more of that. But if we continue to have notice the air quotes, you guys, representation of characters that don't actually represent anyone, if anything, it should be insulting to people. If anything, we need to start boycotting a lot of this.
Right. Because you get to a point where it's like some of this representation, air quotes, becomes almost like just perpetuating stereotypes in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the way the media portrays, if anything, it's become all just a bunch of minstrel shows, right? Where you have a bunch of people, a bunch of white people. I'm gonna push this, for sure. A bunch of white people writing out these characters in their own personal fan fictions of what they think those lives are like. And I'm sure there's obviously white people who can probably relate to a lot of experiences of the characters of different races that they're writing out. But at the end of the day, they're basically taking stereotypes and what they think, is the lifestyle of that person, and they're writing this out thinking it's representation, but really it's just one giant slap in the face.
100%, Ashton. 100%. Dre, anything to add to that? I think she's spot on.
No, I think there's some good points to be had here for sure. I mean,
nothing is cringier than a white. By the way, you can always tell when two gay characters in a fan fiction, this is the greatest example I can use. You can always tell when two gay characters in a fan fiction or any fiction is written by a straight white woman. You can always tell. So when you read the scripts, when you watch these movies and watch these TV shows, you can tell when certain elements were thought of someone who has no idea what they're talking about. And I wouldn't be surprised. Now, obviously, the writer for She-Hulk series is a woman who hasn't even read She-Hulk, mind you. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of what's going into She-Hulk's character development was a man who's putting a lot of this together. I wouldn't be surprised.
That's interesting because the writer's room is completely women, from what I understand. Just like it's like, I think like 9 women doing the writing on She-Hulk.
So it makes me even question them, like, what's their background? Like, like, where did they grow up? How did they grow up? What's their class? I have to ask these kind of questions because, again, She-Hulk to me looks like every typical white woman who grew up in an upper middle class family and was, there's nothing interesting about her.
You make a good point here, where it's like I think there's moreover, there's a lack of life experience that because like I've heard this before too. The writers of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, you know, they went through a lot. You know, before they were writers, you know, they've seen world wars, they've seen the horrors
Great
of the 20th
Depression.
century. Yeah, the Great Depression. So they have a lot of life experience in which to pull from in order to help them or assist them in their writing. And I think,
But
I think
those writers
go
were
ahead.
also mainly white men, and they would write stories. They would write these stories,
Right.
and they would also improperly portray people who weren't from the same background. And that's the thing that we're still facing today that I don't understand. We complain so much about how we're not getting proper representation of different minorities and LGBT groups and anything you can think of in movies and TV shows. But yet we're still letting the same problem from the 1950s and 60s pursue.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that it was necessarily a better time and that there weren't problems with it.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
just saying that.
But at least,
think
and also,
go
at
ahead.
least the stories were good, you know?
Right.
And now it's almost like they're trying so hard to grab for marketability and what kind of merchandise they can. By the way, I can always tell when a TV series and a movie is purposely being written for what merchandise is going to come out.
Yeah,
Because that's what they're focused on. That's why Fantastic Beasts was made. It's why the She-Hulk series is being made. It's why they're changing things in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's why they're doing this and this and this over here. They're saying it's for representation. They're saying it's for activism. But at the end of the day, they're coming out with merchandise within seconds. They're not focused on the writing. They're not focused on the characters. They're focused on, well, if we get this TV series out, no matter how terrible it is, what kind of merchandise can we sell? Because Hot Topic is already selling a Lord of the Rings merch because of Rings of Power.
Yeah.
They don't care about, you know, the writing of these shows. They don't care about the story. They care about selling you merchandise because we live in a consumerist nation and a consumerist culture.
Well, and Ashton, to your point, a lot of these studios, they're all about the virtue signaling, right? Because like here in the States, they'll market the representation, inclusiveness, all this stuff. But Disney, the same company that will market that inclusiveness and representation here in the States, once they go to
China,
right? Exactly. When they go to China, then they market it differently, like a film like Black Panther. Then they hide Chadwick Boseman and all that because it's different over there in China, right?
Which is sad because Black Panther was very well done. It's one of the best Marvel movies ever made. And I feel like that's a great example of how representation needs to be put together. And at the end of the day, Black Panther was very well done story-wise, character, personality. Everything was so well done. Set, costumes, everything was so perfectly well done. But then, again, going back to, you know, the Thor version of Miles, it's a whole backtrack. It's like, what are they doing? I want to know what happened between the years 2017 and now. Because we haven't really seen a good Disney in general. I haven't really seen a good Disney film since Coco. And that was 2017? Because Onward was okay, but that was like Pixar. Soul was pretty good, but that was also Pixar actually.
Coco is Pixar as well.
Yeah.
Is Coco Pixar?
Yeah. Pixar. Yeah, that's Pixar.
Everything since then has been a sequel, a remake, live action remake, Marvel, Star Wars. I haven't been seeing many good Disney films come out.
Have you seen Luca, Ashton? Have you seen Luca?
You know what? Encanto was really good. I take that back. I didn't like Luca.
You didn't like Luca? Okay.
I didn't like Luca.
Interesting.
I liked
Encanto was great though. I loved Encanto.
I will say this. I loved Encanto, but when I think her name's Lucia, the strong sister, when she was singing her songs, I could not handle when the donkeys were TikTok dancing.
Yeah.
I hated that. Everything about that film was perfectly done except for two things. The opening song when she's introducing her family, I feel like was sort of just like it was just a lot to take in one song. You couldn't really take it all in.
That's a lot.
And two, the TikTok dancing donkeys I could have done without, honestly. But besides that, Encanto is brilliantly done. fantastic. The colors, the animation, the majority of the music, the storyline. I really and also I did appreciate that Mirabelle didn't have. In fact, I was actually hoping that none of the family members would have powers at the end of the film. I was kind of hoping the power would be gone because they didn't need it anymore. But I did appreciate that Mirabelle still didn't have a power at the end, just because I felt like she didn't need it. No. She had her own sort of inner power, her personality, I guess. But I really did appreciate Encanto as a film. Coco is one of the most amazing animated feature films I've ever seen in my entire life. Frozen 2 made me gag. Any adult who says they enjoyed Frozen 2 is lying to themselves. If you're a child and like Frozen 2, makes sense. If you're an adult, I don't see how you can watch Frozen 2, which is an absolute disaster of a plot, story, character development. The animation, fantastic.
Yeah.
Frozen 2, besides that, is a disaster. Absolute
Ashton,
disaster.
You bring up a great point, and I want to kind of pick your brain on this because I've been kind of ranting for years now. Like you mentioned Encanto and like the TikTok dancing donkeys and all that stuff. And I've been kind of ranting for years now that Disney animation has always been kind of a timeless thing, right? It's a very timeless kind of they release very timeless content, generational. My big thing with movies like Encanto and Moana with the Twitter joke and all that is that
there was a Twitter joke.
There was a Twitter joke in Moana. The thing is like I feel like when you insert that into these movies, you kind of kneecap the movie for future generations. So it like, for example, in 25, 30 years, when you're watching Moana and you come across a Twitter joke, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
Or like Encanto, TikTok dancers, that this stuff becomes very dated. So as Disney animation, which is notoriously very timeless.
That's so true.
Right? Like Ashton, do you feel like these kind of insertions of like these modern kind of like things sort of like damage these films for years to come?
A little bit, yeah. It's actually kind of frustrating when I think about it because I can't see it. Now I can't see future generations being into things like Encanto. Now that I think about it, because of maybe because I look at that scene and I kind of cringe. Maybe we could be wrong. We could be wrong because it's still pretty well done. But like I can still watch Snow White. But then again, there are some kids, my generation, who don't like Snow White. They think she's boring. There's some people who don't like Sleeping Beauty. They can't watch an animated film unless it was made 90s and after. So I think it really depends on the actual individual because, for example, a lot of people hate 2000s Disney. I think 2000s Disney within its prime, like Atlantis, Treasure Planet, Lilo and Stitch, the films that no one talks about. I love, like extremely goofy movie. I think was like what 1999. Although I think Goofy Movie actually is better than Extremely Goofy Movie.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, definitely. Although I do love the Poetry Girl in Extreme Goofy. I think she's so funny. But there's just I feel like it really does depend on the individual. But I will say this, since we are talking about it, you live in California, so you know Disneyland. Yeah. Disneyland's recent fireworks show. Awful. When I came to Disney World, when I came to Florida, I went to Disney World. I was like, thank God they've got good fireworks shows because Disneyland.
Which one? Is it Mickey's Mixed Magic?
Not the recent one. Happily Ever After is my favorite.
Well, Happily Ever After for sure for Walt Disney World, but you were talking about Disneyland specifically and how awful the fireworks show was. Was it Mickey's Mixed Magic that you saw?
I hate Mickey's Mixed Magic. Were they got the techno songs?
Yes, that's the one. We all hate it. Like we all hate that thing with a passion. It's a terrible fireworks show.
When they had the fireworks shows in 2016, they had the projectors for the first time. Like, this is amazing. This is fantastic. But honestly, the best fireworks show, in my opinion, to ever exist was at Disneyland in 2005 for the 50th anniversary, where they did like all the different parts of the park. And they had they had the Thunder Mountain at one point. They had the Haunted Mansion. They had this music from Space Mountain. They turned into a fireworks show. 2005 Disneyland fireworks show was the best fireworks show Disney
Yes.
Parks has ever done.
Oh,
Best
Ashton,
one.
100%. 100%. Remember Dreams Come True.
Mhm.
Phenomenal show. I love what they did with that. And the great thing, I've been saying this for a long time. When it comes to Disneyland or Disney Parks and Entertainment, simplicity is king, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a whole lot. Like with that show, they didn't do a whole lot. They shot fireworks off the Matterhorn and kind of made it seem like they were cannonballs from Pirates of the Caribbean. Very simple technique, but oh God, so perfect. The Star Tours segment when they do the lasers onto Main Street, and then the fireworks would explode on Main Street. Very simple effect, but oh God, it works so perfect.
It's the reason I loved it is because they did nostalgia properly.
Yeah.
We're in a time with Disney where they're marketing off nostalgia because you have a lot of Disney adults like us who do not have children, and we're feeding off our own nostalgia from our childhood. Because some of us, like myself, have childhood trauma, need to relive it. And the problem is you've got Disney doing nostalgia all wrong. Because with Disneyland, the way they did it for their 50th anniversary, they did nostalgia, but they did it where you could tell they cared about it. Yeah. Now it's very much, what can we sell to these dumb Disney adults who have all of this adult money? Basically, what's happening, and so they're going to remake They're going to remake one of my favorite Disney films, Hercules, and they're going to ruin it. Then they're going to remake Hunchback of Notre Dame, and they're going to ruin it. They're going to ruin everything, and they're going to wonder, why is no one coming to our movies anymore? Because the problem is we're now developing an entire generation now that doesn't think about story, that doesn't think about plot. They're going to think about, what can I consume? What can I buy? What can I add to this collection? You know, they took thingamabobs and who's its and what's it to a whole new level, Disney. Good job. Like, it's all about what merchandise we can sell. And that is like, look, you know, Disney really made me rethink capitalism, because I'm sitting here thinking, you know, capitalism is great because you can buy all this great stuff and do all these amazing things with it. But we're also basically, one, the way Disney treats its workers is absolutely disgusting. And two, we're at a time where Disney does not care about their own animation, their own stories, which is like the whole reason Disney even exists. Walt Disney is rolling in his grave. And obviously a lot of people do bring up the fact that Walt Disney might not agree with, you know, today's time and acceptance and how we accept people nowadays. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that Disney was so meticulous in his story building, in his writing, in his developing. And we're not even doing that. We have the ability to make these amazing, inclusive characters, these diverse characters, these very interesting characters from all over the world of different cultures and backgrounds. And we're just not doing it. They're giving us these cardboard copy cutouts of things that they don't represent anything. It's boring. Yeah. Lame.
No, 100%. Yeah. 100%. Now we're gonna pivot now to the parks. The parks now. I'm so curious.
Speaking of diversity and trying to change things to appeal to activism.
There we go.
I already know where we're going with this one.
We're going. We're going to talk about Disney kind of removing the problematic elements from attractions. Good, bad, and different.
Let's just say what we're really thinking on our mind here. It's Splash Mountain. I love Splash Mountain. Everyone who has been on it, every race, every background, okay, who has been on Splash Mountain loves Splash Mountain. Do not pretend you always knew. These people who are popping in saying, I always knew it was problematic. Liars. Lies. You knew nothing until Disney basically announced that they were changing it, or until a journalist told you. Yeah. Now here's the thing. I have seen Song of the South. There are parts of it where I do question, like for example, the Tar Baby scene. I'm like, this is a little, there's a reason they changed it to Honey in the ride. I can understand that. But this idea that Uncle Remus is a poorly written character is ridiculous. He's just this guy chilling out. And by the way, it's post-slavery. Yes. So there's no slaves at this time. It's post-slavery. This, you know, it's still problematic for its time because people still do not have equal rights. Obviously, it's the 1800s. What do you expect?
Of course.
But Uncle Remus is just chilling out, telling these kids this story about a cartoon rabbit. That's all it really is. Now, there are problems within old Disney films. I am not denying that. But if you can sit here and tell me how Song of the South is problematic, but you still got the Native American scene in the Peter Pan ride, you had to take away the whip from the mouse on the Dumbo ride, you still got the Siamese cats in Lady and the Tramp, you still got all of these different scenes, and you still got Jim Crow and Dumbo. You gotta talk about all of Jim Crow in Dumbo. You still got Dumbo on Disney Plus with the Jim Crow scene. It's got a little warning label before you watch the film, but nothing in Song of the South, it will ever be as bad as Jim Crow in Dumbo, or the Siamese cats in Lady and the Tramp, or even Why is the Red Man Red in Peter Pan. Nothing in that film is as problematic as that. Now here's the thing, I'm actually pretty excited for. I was very upset at first because I'm obvious for nostalgic reasons. I grew up on Splash Mountain, but I will say this. Princess and the Frog does need a ride. Now, should it be replacing Splash Mountain? Personally, I want to keep Splash Mountain around as long as possible for the simple sake of nostalgia. I'm not going to deny it. I love it for the simple fact that I grew up with the ride. But the fact that Princess Tiana does not have as much in the theme parks as she should. Like, honestly, I think Princess Tiana, if anything, Princess and the Frog should have a restaurant, if anything, not a ride. Because her whole thing was food. Yeah. Why does Princess Tiana not have her own restaurant in the parks yet? We have the room in Disney World to do it. We could easily take something in New Orleans Square in Disneyland and replace that with Tiana's Palace. I think they changed it to Palace after Place at the end of the film. I'm not quite sure. I don't know why they don't do that. And on top of that, I can understand why people want to change it because, you know, there are some things in the ride, you know, that like, for example, the animatronics are outdated. A lot of the stuff is old. But I can't lie when I say that I love Splash Mountain for the sake of nostalgic reasons. What I think Disney should have done is, I think they should have taken Song of the South, and I think they should have remade it as like a full cartoon. And just have it as Rare Rabbit. Like, not even with like Uncle Remus or anything about that, which is really odd because Uncle Remus, technically, the guy who played him actually won an Oscar for that role. Yes. And the woman who played what was her name? I forget her full name, Hattie, but she was the first Black woman to ever receive an Oscar because of Gone with the Wind. Yes. She is also in that film as well. But I would love to see them actually remake Song of the South with better representation. Because it is a Disney property that could be marketable, which Disney is obsessed with, and they could do it in the right way with modern times.
This is what Disney Glimpses actually said when we had spoken to him in private chat, OG and I. He was saying, look, listen, the solution to the Song of the South problem is to reimagine Song of the South through the cartoon characters featured in that film, right? And that way people do it properly, and so that way the associations change. Because you basically have this attraction associated with a film that nobody can even see, that Disney themselves has distanced themselves from, and all that kind of stuff, right? So now the only way people really have a view into that film, because they can't get it themselves, is other people's interpretations of it, right? So it's like, you know, of course the interpretation is going to be bad because, you know, they're just repeating what other people have said about it, and so it's just gets lost in translation. Whereas if you reintroduce it with a new association, now it kind of all flows together. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. Nobody would ever question it if Disney had not removed it. Because Disney tried to hide it for so long, that's what made people a little suspicious about it. And that's what made journalists write articles about it. Because again, there are scenes in Lady and the Tramp and Peter Pan and, again, Jim Crow in Dumbo. Yeah. Like, there are scenes in Disney films that are 1,000 times more problematic than that entire movie, Song of the South. But because Disney went out of their way to hide that film. By the way, They hid that film right when Splash Mountain came out.
Yes,
right when
yes,
it came out.
Right.
Because they were thinking to themselves, okay, if we're going to make this into a ride, maybe we shouldn't, because it was during a lot of stuff happening at that time. And again, I do not understand how Disney can hide Song of the South, but not these other films with problematic scenes that are way worse than the entire film altogether. If Disney had never hid it, people wouldn't be questioning it the way they are. And if anything, with Disney's obsession with reimagining everything and turning everything into a live action, doing remakes, sequels, whatever, they could have easily made something that was marketable as Splash Mountain and made it into a whole new story and addressed the old Song of the South movie then and there and say, you know what? We're going to do this, but we're going to do it properly. Yeah.
No, I do agree with you. Look, when Frank Wells made the announcement that we're going to go ahead and basically table this whole film, right, because of some kind of interpretation at the time of what that film represented or whatever.
It was the Tar Baby, because the Tar Baby was originally on the ride at Splash Mountain, but then they replaced it with the Beehives.
I'd have to look into it. From what I understand, I mean, maybe that happened. I'm not quite familiar with Walt Disney World's history as I am with Disneyland's, but there were definitely like, okay, you can't have Uncle Remus in Splash Mountain. That was like, a mandate from Michael Eisner. And I believe they put it out in theaters for like 2 weeks during the process of development for Splash Mountain, just to see what the public reception would be to even Song of the South, much less a multi-million-dollar attraction. Very expensive, by the way. So it was a big gamble. That's why they wanted to put it out and just kind of get audience feedback from it. The film was actually had a successful run for that couple of weeks.
Really?
Yes, it was very successful run, no protests, whatever, and it actually made a bit of a profit there. So that's why they went forward with Splash Mountain at all.
Why would they hide the film then? Because I was told they hid the film in order to get Splash Mountain to go through the process.
So they definitely distanced themselves after Splash Mountain actually took hold. And I think it was because, well, okay, yes, like it worked then. Well, these projects are so expensive. You're looking at Splash Mountain to be around for 30, 40, 50 years or so. So it's like, okay, maybe the perception of this film will change even as time goes on. So maybe we should distance ourselves now, even after we built it, so that a negative perception doesn't persist. I think that was the intention at the time before. But obviously,
that backfired.
It backfired.
If anything,
because it was censored.
It made it worse. It made it worse. It really did.
They should have changed the association. They didn't. They left a hole there, and I think that hole was exploited. Go ahead.
Because in the movie, it's a Tar Baby, and the ride, it's Beehives, and that I can understand why people would want to change that. But again, Disney had an opportunity to basically take something that was done very wrong and say, you know what, let's try and make this right, and it could have been still marketable. We could have still had Splash Mountain, but again, I'm not upset that Princess and the Frog is going to be the replacement. I was at first, because again, I love Splash Mountain for nostalgic purposes, but I am excited because I will say I do love Princess and the Frog. I love Louie. He's my favorite character of all the Disney animals, because he is an alligator, and alligators are my favorite. I will say though, how is the Princess and the Frog ride going to fit in at Disney World? Because Frontierland is where...
That's a big discussion right now, because obviously Frontierland, you've got it, 1870s or so, and it just doesn't quite line up with the with the timeline of.
And it's not Louisiana, because you got New Orleans Square.
Right, yeah. New Orleans Square, I think Splash Mountain at Disneyland's going to work out just fine. But that becomes really complicated in Frontierland, because Splash Mountain's right in the middle of it. So it's not like you can even have a section of it that kind of transforms into one from the other. It's like right dab in the middle of Frontierland. So how is that going to work necessarily with the Old West, with New Orleans, Louisiana? The topography also has issues, because Louisiana is very flat. There is no mountains in which to speak of. It's just kind of all of these problems that come from, and I believe it comes from people who are a little bit more like I said, ideologically inclined, then creatively inclined, then, like you said, consistently inclined, right? And these could have been headed off at the pass, but I think there was such a rush in order to announce and get this Splash Mountain out of the parks. They really didn't think about the consequences therein, and now they're kind of like I think they're kind of struggling with this, and the amount of investment required to actually do this is going to be considerable.
Well, and really, at Disneyland, it's kind of perfect because you like you said, you have New Orleans on one side, and you got Critter Country on the other side. And
Well, that
this
means
franchise,
there's only one ride for Critter Country now, which is Winnie the Pooh.
that's it.
You know what? If they remove Winnie the Pooh and bring back the Country Bears, because the Country Bears are still technically, they've got Louisiana Bears, they're still technically the swamp, I wouldn't mind that.
I wouldn't mind
hate
it.
I wouldn't
Winnie
mind
the
that
Pooh.
either.
Not only
I
would I
hate
not mind
Winnie the
that, I
Pooh.
would love that.
Yeah, I would invite that, actually.
You know what? If the Princess and the Frog ride brings back the Country Bears to Disneyland, I would not mind that at all.
Good compromise.
I hate Winnie the Pooh. I do not like the fact that we don't have Mr. Toad and we don't have Snow White here in Florida because of Winnie the Pooh. I'm like, you honestly got rid of Mr. Toad for Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah.
I hate you.
I know.
People at the time
did
were very passionate about that as well.
They did Florida wrong on that. They did them real wrong on that.
They
Who
did.
wants Winnie the Pooh?
Well,
Why?
Why wouldn't you just construct a new, like you said, we had the blessing of size. Okay, why don't you go ahead and construct a new
Disney
building in
World-
which to house Winnie the Pooh?
Disney World has enough room at Epcot for 11 new countries. We have enough land to build a whole new park. Like, we have here's the thing, it makes no sense to me how Disneyland has 2 parks and like 80 something attractions, and Florida has 4 parks, excessive land to build like 2 more parks, and 60 something attractions. That's what
Crazy.
ticks me off.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And that's why it's funny when I talk to the normies and like I'll talk to people and I'll be like, you should, you've never been to Disneyland, you've been to Disney World, you should come to California. Oh, well, I don't need to go there. There's more at Florida. Well, but our resort has more. Yeah, we have more rides here.
I get so bored. Honestly, if it wasn't for drinking, Epcot would be boring. I don't.
Oh no!
I
Oh,
don't.
Showcase is he's going crazy right now in the premiere.
I
tell.
No, I don't. Honestly, Hollywood Studios, boring. The only thing they have is shows. You know what? I will say this: the fact that Hollywood Studios has an Indiana Jones show, amazing, so cool.
Yes.
The fact they've got all these amazing shows, wonderful. Star Wars Land is lame, super lame. I will say this: we have the Tower of Terror still. You got that janky Guardians of the Galaxy ride. I will say this: our Guardians of the Galaxy ride at Epcot 1,000 times better because it's just so cool.
Hey, fair.
I've heard
problem
amazing things about it.
Is that you got these 4 parks and like 2 good rides for each park. Like, so I'll go to Epcot and I'll ride Guardians of the Galaxy. I'll ride Project Rewind, and then I'll get out and be like, okay, guys, time to get drunk. Because Test Track is boring. Test Track is boring.
Mm-hmm. What about Spaceship Earth?
Nobody likes Spaceship Earth.
Oh, man.
Soaring,
Oh.
we do have Soaring Around the World, but I will say that Soaring Around California will always be my favorite in comparison.
Yeah.
Yep.
Look, when you're on Soaring Around the World and you see the Eiffel Tower go this way, you're just kind of like...
Yep. The leaning tower of Paris there. For sure. No, people in California, especially, they actually do like Soaring Over California. It's just, I don't know, even like the music and its construction, it's just a better film.
And the scents. Like
Yeah.
you go over the
The
Orange
scents.
Grove, you smell oranges. It's
The
great.
Orange Groves? The Orange Groves?
Yeah.
The Orange
It's great. The Orange Grove. I love Disney World. I love being here. I will say this: the Magic Kingdom at Disney World is better overall, but
Oh.
I will, only because we have the country. We have like a lot of the original stuff that I do miss, but now I miss Mr. Toad because Mr. Toad's my favorite. He's like my favorite Disney bound I've ever done.
Yeah.
Ever.
Awesome.
Okay.
I love Mr. Toad. I do miss him a lot. But like, I will say, I do like the Magic Kingdom because I do. You know what though? I actually, now I think I miss the castle at Disneyland better now because I don't like the colors they painted Cinderella Castle. They're ugly.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
The colors they painted for the 50th are so ugly.
Yeah, it's like this weird, like puke, like
It's like a dusty, like rusty pink color, right? At night, it's so beautiful. But in the daytime, you're like, what is this? Like, why this color?
Rose
It's
gold.
ugly.
It was capitalizing on the rose gold trend.
It's ugly.
Yeah.
it's ugly.
Yeah.
You know what?
Oh, go ahead.
Disney needs to make a villains park.
Yes.
They need to use that extra land and build a Disney villains park. Because
Now you're
honestly,
speaking George's language.
if they want to think about all of the money, honestly, I'm thinking about money making here. Okay, I'm a huge villains fan. I'm a wannabe goth. Okay, I'm real with you. But if they want to make a bunch of money and please, the rides would be amazing. Like, and all the different themes they could do, like Hades theme, which is like the underworld. Okay, it's like Greek and it's amazing. You got the Cerberus with 3 heads. You know, and then you got basically fighting with Universal Studios, who's got the best Cerberus. And then, yeah, because honestly, look, I love Harry Potter. Hagrid's my favorite ride of all time. But when you see Fluffy, you're just kind of like, that's Fluffy? That thing is Fluffy? It's got like the heads like moving like this. I'm just like, oh my gosh. No, Disney, honestly, villains park. Because you can do a Hades area. You can do a Queen of Hearts. You can do her maze. You can do Maleficent. A dragon roller coaster?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
You can do Chernobog?
Disneyland Paris gets a dragon, but we don't. That pisses me off.
Right?
I want dragons.
We definitely got to have dragons. I mean, that's. I mean,
gotta have
a
more dragons.
book ride where like you're basically on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
I know. There's so many great. Yeah, there's so. Oh gosh. I mean, well, on the food aspect, you can sell like poison apples and stuff like that. I mean, it lends itself so beautifully to a theme park
green apples, but instead of caramel, it's like a sour candy hard around the green apple.
Mm-hmm.
That can be their poison apple. Oh my gosh, Disney, here's the thing. I can think of so many amazing ideas. I'm just like, why does Warner Brothers and Disney not hire me? And that's the thing is like, you got all these people, right, who like work for Disney and Warner Brothers as like social media people for them. And all they do is kiss their butt, right? But like, Disney and Warner Brothers honestly should be hiring the people who like sit on their phones all day criticizing them because they're the people actually listen to. They're the people who always think of the best ideas that Disney is not taking. And those are the people Disney could actually make money off of because they're actually being honest. And I will say there is a commodity in people being angry at Disney and Warner Brothers just to be angry and making money off of that, and that does annoy me. For example, when people complain about something just because it's woke, that really annoys me, and they never go into detail of why like being woke is bad, because sometimes being woke can be a good thing if it's done properly. But the thing is, when I see people who are generally like, hey, Disney, this is what you gotta fix, this is how you could actually make more money, and then Disney's just like, oh, look at this dumb influencer criticizing us to criticize us. I'm like, no, that person's got a point. Like, you guys, that wasn't a good example of this. Oh, yeah. Like, when people tell Disney, hey, don't remove your Fast Pass service, maybe don't remove your Fast Pass service. Here's the thing. Disney's Fast Pass, the whole Disney Genie thing, it's working for Disney now, but it's eventually going to die off because people who are coming to the parks, coming from around the world to come to this park, they're going to think to themselves, why am I paying all this extra money? Whereas if I go to Universal Studios, and if I just got like a annual pass to Universal Studios, I get an express pass with my annual pass.
Oh, that's
Disney's going to realize, oh shoot. Because here's the thing. Disney was like the only park that didn't charge for fast passes. So it made it kind of worth it. Right. And now they're charging for fast passes. And now it's not worth it to go anymore for a lot of people who don't live here.
It was high price of entry, but you got services included. Whereas the other parks were more like cheap price of entry, but there were extras, right?
And
now it's high price of entry, now with charges on the
And now
back
Universal is charging the same price of entry as Disney.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
that's been going on
Plus,
for
plus
quite a while.
crazy prices for Express Pass. It's
Yeah.
just it's pretty frustrating that like this is happening, and this is definitely becoming. The worst part is people are still going to pay them. People are still going to buy stuff.
Oh yeah.
And it's
Oh.
sad because like Disney has the ability to create amazing attractions and amazing things, and they won't do it because they now know they can get away with it doing it with it cheaply.
100%. And Ashton, you bring up a great point. When you to kind of go back a little bit, when you said just because something is woke doesn't mean it's bad. And I'll give you a great example of that. DuckTales reboot.
Yes! 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 I love DuckTales reboot.
I love
David
that
Tennant playing Scrooge McDuck is the greatest casting decision in animation. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
It was flawless. And here's the thing. If you were to take that show and you were to look at the character of Webby, you'd go, oh, that's woke. Because now she's kind of like a tomboy. She's kind of like more like a strong female, right? And so a lot of people will go, oh, that's woke. But you know what? It works. She grew up around boys. She grew up around Huey, Dewey, and Louie. So of course she's going to be a little bit more rough around the edges. She's hanging with the boys all those years, right? So she's going to be. It makes sense, right? So in that context, I think this version of Webby is actually a lot better than the version we saw in the 80s. So just because something is kind of like woke or strong female or this, that, and the other doesn't necessarily always make it bad. And people seem to forget that. Now, there are examples when you go woke and it's very superficial that it is bad, but in many circumstances, you can go woke and still be quality, still be better. And Webby is a perfect example. I love Webby. She's better. She's a more interesting character in this reboot than she was ever in the old show.
Owl House, which is a great show Disney had on Disney's Channel, happened to have a bisexual character as the main character, and this was Disney Channel, and a lot of people didn't like it, but I think, one, it was a great story, it was a great aesthetic, it was really interesting. I couldn't care less if the character was bisexual. I think more like 10 to 11, 12-year-olds are going to like that show more than most of the younger kids anyway. I feel like that's around the time that kids really do start to realize they're like they start developing crushes in school anyway. And Disney canceled it. Owl House, which was a great show, and they didn't cancel it because people were complaining. They just canceled it because they thought it wasn't marketable anymore, which is so not true. Owl House was an amazing show that could have continued, and that had a bisexual lead character. It was on Disney Channel, and it worked. And now people are wondering, like, okay, you claim to be pro-LGBT, but you just got rid of, like, your best representation. And another great example of this is Umbrella Academy, where Elliot Page, after he transitioned and came out as male, they handled the transition perfectly. They had the transition happen to basically say, okay, well, I forgot what they changed his name to. But basically they made him a trans male because Elliot Page is a trans man, and they handled it. They gave it a good 5 minutes to discuss it, say this is what's happening, and they never touched it again. It's obsolete. The story continues. That's what I'm okay with. What I don't like is, for example, the remake of The Craft, where you have a trans character every 5 minutes has to remind everyone that she's trans. Has to remind everyone that she's trans. It pauses the story, has nothing to do with the story, has nothing to do with even the character dynamic. She just says she's trans. It has nothing to do with the character arc, the character development, the story, anything. It's just there to be there for representation purposes. But if it's just there for representation purposes and doesn't actually add anything to the character herself, is it actually representation? No. No.
It's identity in place of character and story. It's what that is, right? And in place of character traits, I think is what you're kind of speaking to, because it's like outside of her, outside of whatever the identity is, let's say, what other character traits is there? And it's like, well, there are none. We don't need them, because it's like, and it's like, well, that's just a cover for crap writing. At that point, which is actually more harmful to those identities than helpful, I think is what, if I can get on the same wavelength there.
And with Victor, that's the name of his character now. With Elliot Page's character, Victor, it actually does make sense with the story, with his identity, because this is a character that's been struggling with their identity their entire life. They've been wondering, who the hell am I? What's going on? Oh, wait, I have superpowers? Okay, I wasn't told that my entire life. Basically being mistreated by his entire family, treated as an outcast, dealing with the fact that, and then of course, when they go back in the 1960s, he has, at the time when he still identified as a woman, he was a lesbian, but then he identified, he was obviously always a man but basically what I'm saying is it makes sense. It makes sense to the character because you see this character go through a process of trying to understand who he is as a person. And then one day he's like, wait a minute, I know it's wrong now. This is not who I am as a person. Takes 5 minutes to transition, develop himself as a man now, and then continues with the story as a man. And it works. It works out well. Whereas, again, there are times we're just like, okay, we're just going to change it like that. And we're going to remind everybody why we did it and how it's happening. There's a way to make it flow with the story, flow with the characters, and help it work.
100%. Ashton, I want to pick your brain a little bit on Pirates of the Caribbean. Because over the years, I mean, and not even just recently, but like even back in like the Michael Eisner era, they were kind of changing this out. Like here in Disneyland, they changed
Here
out.
is the difference between the redhead from Pirates of the Caribbean and changing Splash Mountain to Princess and the Frog. Splash Mountain needed a refurbishment. It needed new animatronics. It needed something new anyway. It makes sense because honestly, the Princess and the Frog could work. It works. It works. I'm not even mad about it anymore. And honestly, I'm kind of excited for it because I can't wait to see Ray and Louie on a park ride. Because they're like my favorite characters. But no, seriously, I love alligators to the point where I think Louie is just the best animal companion ever. He's an alligator that plays the trumpet. What better can you get? Anyway,
it's great.
Pirates of the Caribbean replacing the redhead. It makes sense, but it's annoying. Because at the end of the day, their reason for changing her was the changing of times, and because of feminism, and because people were complaining. Nobody was complaining about the redhead. Nobody was complaining about pirates chasing women. We all are aware of what was happening during that time. We all know what pirates do. Pirates are not good people. Pirates are not all pirates are like Captain Jack Sparrow, where they happen to be suave and happen to steal stuff. No, pirates were not good people. And what they could have done with Pirates of the Caribbean to make it more marketable with their movie series was by making it so you got the good pirates and the bad pirates chasing the women, Captain Jack Sparrow trying to stop the bad pirates. There's so many things you could have done. Yeah. The reason they changed the redhead wasn't because of feminism. It just so happened at that time, Keira Knightley no longer wanted to do the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So Disney thought to themselves, oh no, how are we going to sell this Pirates movie to little girls? As if little girls even watched Pirates of the Caribbean for Keira Knightley. No, I wanted to be Captain Jack Sparrow. Never once in my time watching that film thinking, I can really relate to Elizabeth Swann. No. Nobody cared about Elizabeth Swann.
Right.
Disney was like, the whole reason Disney brought in Penelope Cruz for the 4th film and then made this female scientist character for the 5th film is the same reason they brought in the new redhead for the ride. Because they thought, oh no, we need a female to sell to other females. So they brought out all of the different new costumes. They developed a new character, which Margot Robbie, I'm guessing, is going to end up playing in the new film. Look, you could do a whole Pirates of the Caribbean series with not a single woman in that movie. Only Captain Jack. Only him. Seriously, you could do a whole series with not a single woman in sight, and I guarantee you, women will still watch. Well, not even because of Johnny Depp, because Captain Jack Sparrow is one of the most iconic characters in film history. So when I see them change the redhead, I'm not even mad about what they changed the redhead to. I'm mad because I know the real reason they did it and they're lying about it. I'm mad because they think they can tell people it's because we're feminists. It's because we care about representation. No, it's because you realized that Keira Knightley was quitting and you needed to make up some whole new female character to sell young women, to sell more merchandise.
100%.
They made They made a redhead Buccaneer costume within 2 weeks before the new redhead was released.
It was ready to go. It was ready to go.
It doesn't sell. It doesn't sell. It just doesn't sell. And then you get these women. You get like this woman character. They have the Buccaneer now walking around as like a meet and greet character around the ride. And then like she's wondering like, why is no one walking up to me for pictures? Because no one cares about you. I guarantee you this Margot Robbie movie is going to flop. It's going to flop. It's going to flop because nobody wants this new redhead. And the whole reason people are now more nostalgic for the old redhead is because they changed it. Nobody would have missed the We Wants the Redhead if they hadn't replaced it. Nobody thought about the redhead until they replaced it.
Right, exactly, Ashton. No one even thought about it. It was so like commonplace, and so people were so.
Do you know
like,
how many people cosplay as the original redhead now because they replaced it?
Yes,
That's so funny.
You basically
funny.
ingrained the old redhead into history by taking her out.
Well, I always like the redhead story because apparently the redhead painting that you see in the kind of skeleton trunk scene there is supposed to be like the same redhead character that you see on the ride later on, and the idea is that she gets involved with the pirates themselves and actually like takes over and becomes a captain herself. I always thought that was kind of really cool that, you know, she has this kind of arc there.
See, that's
very
an interesting story. If they use that story in the new movie, like where she's starting out, honestly, okay, Disney, I hope you're watching this, because here's what you gotta do. The next movie with Margot Robbie and Johnny Depp, you start off Margot Robbie's redhead character. She's being sold off to marriage. She doesn't want to be sold off to marriage. She's the only hot one, so all the creepy dudes are looking at her like, we want the redhead. So what does she do? She steals some guy's sword, escapes, and then runs off to become a pirate. Done. Explained. But if they pretend as if this redhead character, the original redhead, never existed, that's what's going to piss me off. Because that's the problem is, my problem isn't so much them replacing things because I'm nostalgic, right? Wait, here's the thing. My issue with the Splash Mountain thing isn't even so much I dislike Tiana. Because honestly, I like Princess and the Frog more. I'm going to be real with you.
Okay.
My issue is, and also because I'm nostalgic for what I grew up with, but my issue is that they're basically censoring Splash Mountain and pretending it never existed.
Yeah.
They're pretending it never happened. They're trying to pretend as if Song of the South never happened. They never made this mistake ever. And that's what pisses people off, is when they basically try to pretend that they never did this bad thing in the past. But then they basically they did the same thing with the redhead. They basically removed the redhead and replaced her with something new. And that's why I'm just like, are we going to like pretend that the original redhead was never there? So I really hope in this new film, they at least address the original redhead.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. Mike, I have an interesting question. You mentioned you're really excited about seeing Louis and Ray.
Yeah.
In the new.
Honestly, because so you know how the frog is like the original narrator of the Splash Mountain.
Yes.
I'm kind of hoping that instead it's going to be like Ray. You see like him as a firefly, not like actually as an animated firefly, but actually see him like on the walls, like in lights.
Yeah.
Like and like narrating the whole story, and then like we'll see Louis playing his like trumpet. I don't know. I love them as characters.
Well, what if I told you that Dr. Facilier and Ray wouldn't be featured at all? Because
oh my gosh,
this is a sequel attraction.
I don't want it anymore. Get rid of it.
Well, and I bring this up. Oh, go ahead.
But there is a caveat to that. That is definitely the word on the street. But the word on the street also is that Louis plays a big part, though, in finding his trumpet, which also plays to what Ashton kind of digs.
True. But I want to go ahead and I just want to say...
That made me realize, because Dr. Facilier, the whole reason I was excited for Princess and the Frog is because when you go over, you know, the final drop, he's got to say, I've got friends on the other side.
Are you ready? You know, as you're going up there.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's... I say this because I think there's an expectation And I think it's, I think you had it, Ash, and I think I think everybody has it. And I don't think they're realizing they're not going in that direction. They're not going to do that. So when people expect that and they go to that attraction and they wait the 2-hour line, they say, what the hell is this? I think there's going to be a reaction there. Okay, that's one. But two, the reason why they're doing this, Ashton, is because they like this franchise, but they don't like this franchise. They have a love-hate relationship with it. And the reason why they don't like it is because even at the time, Princess and the Frog, that film got a lot of criticism because
she's a frog.
She's a frog in so much of it. So in order to avoid that issue, they're going with a sequel version of this attraction and not actually basing it on the film itself. That's an issue because I think people are going in there expecting the film and all of its characters and all of its songs. In fact, they're not even going to do a lot of the songs because, well, now it's a sequel.
Right. Yeah.
How do you feel about it now?
But now, keep in mind, Ashton, before you answer, keep in mind that's definitely an aspect, but Louis and his trumpet is also a big aspect of the story.
I love Louis and his trumpet, but the huge reason I was excited for it was because I was hoping there'd be a creepy part of the ride where Dr. Facilier and his shadow demons are popping around and trying to scare people.
Yes.
And now that's not going to be in there.
Right.
Probably
Apparently
not.
the story is going to be, we had to find Louis' trumpet, and we're looking for it throughout
that
the ride.
Sounds so kiddie.
I know, but it's weird because it's this has a height requirement of 40 inches. So how can you do something that's very kid friendly when kids can't necessarily ride it?
Right.
I don't this is what I'm saying. I think conceptually the idea, right? Conceptually, the idea of changing out Splash Mountain to Princess and the Frog, I think makes sense, initially, right? And they just ran with that, and we're gonna do this. But when you get into the nitty gritty of it, it kind of falls apart, and I really don't know what they're gonna do. And I think that's why we've had a lack of information because it's I think they're struggling with what they're gonna do.
You know what? We need to do my Disney Villains Park idea. Just give Dr. Facilier his own ride.
There you go. Perfect. Perfect solution.
Because they're just ruining everything for me. I was so excited. Honestly, I finally got over losing one of my favorite rides as a kid. My favorite piece of nostalgia. I was like, okay, you know what? It's okay because this is what they're gonna do. They're gonna do it to Dr. Facilier shadow people. Going around scaring people, the demons scaring people. You're gonna have Ray be little light fixture, which is so cool. You're gonna have a Firefly, and now you tell me that, and I'm just what's the point? What's the point?
This is where I'm at with it. It's I want to get excited for something new in the parks, right? I want to get excited for I love Splash Mountain. I'm not gonna lie, but it's I understand why. I've come to terms with it. Okay. And I want to get excited for the future, but it's you change this out and it doesn't perform.
That's the
you
thing
will
is,
have done damage. Go ahead.
I'm cool with them changing it, but if they change it and they do it in the wrong way, they're basically going to replace something that everybody already liked.
Yes!
With something that's done poorly. And they can do Princess and the Frog really well. But the question is, will they?
But will the people... Yeah, too. Even the people who are excited about it, who want to see Tiana representing the parks, are they even getting that version that they want? You actually do more damage than you do good.
Oh my gosh. Because what's the point in it? There's no Dr. Facilier. He's the best character in that entire film.
Right. Apparently they don't want to do voodoo either, but that's a whole nother story.
Are you serious?
Okay, I was going to keep that, but yeah, okay. No. That's apparently what I'm hearing, that they do not want to do voodoo at all.
The evangelists. Oh my gosh.
Go ahead, OG.
Well, and here's the thing, and this kind of circles back to what Ashton was talking about She-Hulk, right? About how you can do feminism, but you can do it in the right way and the wrong way. This is exactly the kind of same thing here, where it's you can do representation, but there's a wrong way and a right way to do it. And just all representation isn't necessarily good. You have to approach it with quality. You have to approach it with the proper kind of mindset, proper creativity. And a lot of times, I think companies like Disney think we're doing our due diligence. We replace the racist attraction with the more inclusive attraction, that's good enough for
That's
us.
it. We're good. We're good to go.
You know?
And it's like, but and really, it causes a lot of tension in the community as well. So like the people who were suggesting that Splash Mountain was at all insensitive were very small. But now you see the community kind of has bifurcated in kind of a very one could say like maybe toxic way, right? And it's a lot of bad blood there. So it's like you're splitting up your fan bases. You're having them kind of warred out amongst themselves. You're changing this over to something that maybe even the general audience won't even like at the end of the day. Like you're just, why go through this is kind of like now becomes kind of my mentality because of all of the potential consequences and the consequences that we've already seen from a maneuver like this. And again, this is going to be hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
And you're not going to add a single ounce of capacity to it.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. We'll see.
Sorry, Ashton. I don't mean to depress you. She looks very, very down, and I did not mean that
I wanted the
at all.
voodoo.
I know.
I wanted the shadow demons.
Honestly,
I wanted the part where the shadow demons pop up, and then Ray's like, "Oh no, you don't," and he smacks him around with his butt.
Right, exactly.
That's why there's so many cool light effects they could have done with that.
Oh, so many. And I was excited for all of those. But when I heard more about it, when I did a little bit more investigation, it's like, this is not shaping up in the way that I think a lot of people originally envisioned when they saw it.
Let's hope. We got D23 in 2 weeks.
Right.
Let's hope they deliver. We're probably going to hear more about
Oh
this
shoot, that's
attraction
right.
in 2 weeks. Let's see.
gosh.
Let's see. I'm on pins and needles. I'm super stressed about it, Ashton. I'm super stressed because there's so much on the line here at this expo. We'll see, you know.
Now, you say D23 Expo, but really it's the D23 Expo.
Yes, exactly.
It's
right?
a lot's riding on it.
Where the
that's why I
fans come to be
emphasize it.
disappointed over things they should be excited for.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, Ashton, many times in many videos, I've been stood up at the altar many times with the D23 Expo. I mean, it's constantly disappointed, but we'll see. I hope.
I have to ask your opinion on something, since you guys are sort of social media people in the world of Disney.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's a lot of larger Disney people, making videos who they clearly want to say something different, but instead they sort of stick around kissing Disney's butt because they get perks from Disney?
Absolutely. I think there is definitely a grift there. I think there's definitely a grift where people are sort of, when you're a content creator and you're sort of accepting either money directly or access, that's going to influence you, right?
That's kind of like what happened with the Star Wars hotel thing, where all these journalists and all these influencers went to it and said, "This is awful," and they still wrote great articles about it. Yeah, because it's like they got the access to go before anyone else did because Disney let them in. Disney's basically bribing them with all these access passes. But it's like, what's the point if you're getting all this access if you can't actually write truthfully about it, And that's the thing that's why no influencers talked about the 50th anniversary. So my birthday is the same day as Disney World. So when I
really?
That's cool. So when I turned, let me see, how old was I in 2021? When I turned 26, Disney turned 50. Disney World turned 50. And I wasn't able to go, obviously, because it was a crazy amount of people going. And nobody talked about it because of how horrible it was. The food wasn't that great. Yeah. There was no celebration. There was no... Because 50th for Disneyland, you had the CEO on a stage. You had all these people on stage talking about the amazing things about Disneyland and the history and the work that went into developing Disneyland. Disney World, it was like they popped up. Everybody ran up to the stage to wait. Mickey and Minnie popped out, waved hands. There was an over announcement, and nothing. That was it. No singing "Happy Birthday." No nothing. And there was a whole performance the night before with Christina Aguilera. Yes. There was a speech, but that was for the journalists and the media and the paid influencers. And
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's fine. It's just so when the fans, the actual people who like ran up last year to go see everything, there was nothing. Whereas in 2005, like they did the whole thing for everybody. It was a community back then.
Right. And here's the thing. This goes into several issues, but people were really expecting something to be done on October 1st. People at that time, they had switched to a new reservation-based system for annual passes. So if you had an annual pass, you only had 3 days in which to reserve, bookings to these theme parks, right? So for months, people kept that October 1st day. So they only had 2 days in which to navigate the parks and enjoy what they had to offer for months in anticipation that there would be something on the back end of that. And the fact that they had those kind of festivities before, not even to the general public, and had absolutely nothing on the October 1st day, that really soured a lot of people right from jump.
Also, fireworks show breaks my heart too. So they just changed the fireworks show here for Disney World.
Yes.
Because people complained. Because what happens, here's the thing, if you know the history of Disney World, it is basically the history of Disneyland with way more heartbreak. Walt Disney never got to see his park built. Yeah. Ever. Not even like an inkling of it built. Roy died right after it was built. The amount of heartbreak and just tears that went into building Disney World.
I always
it's just
say
forgotten.
Oh, it absolutely is. I always say that Roy killed himself to make Walt Disney World a reality. Because back in 1966, he had walked away from the company. He's like, I'm out, I'm retiring, we're good to go. And Walt told him, don't worry, we got it. It's all good. A couple months later, Walt dies. Roy has to make a decision whether or not to keep this company going forward or just sell off his assets, and there you go. And he went into kind of just a silence for like 2 months, really, kind of weighing this decision out. A lot of people were very kind of tense because they didn't know if they were going to have jobs, come decision time here. Roy comes out and says, look, guys, I stepped away. I'm back. But not only that, we are going forward with all of my brother's projects, including the Mineral King Resort, including all the films, and his most ambitious dream, Walt Disney World. We are absolutely going forward with it. And instead of it being called Disney World, we're going to call it Walt Disney World for my brother. And he goes out there and just... Disneyland was built for about $17 million. Walt Disney World was built for $400 million only... 20 years, less than 20 years later. It was a massive effort. It was the biggest private works project ever conducted at that time. I mean, no company had spent that much money on anything like that. He so many things when it comes to the Floridian landscape, so much infrastructure, so much time, so much effort, so much passion. Everybody rallied around this thing. And like I said, Roy dies only months after the opening of Walt Disney World because he put so much into it. Again, he could have retired. He could have had the easy life, and he probably could have lived longer. But he did it for his brother. And so that's what makes that whole story. That's what makes it so amazing and incredible. And the fact that they didn't capitalize on that at October 1st, it kills me. And so that's why when they put his speech in this new fireworks celebration, I got chills because I understood that story.
I haven't even seen it yet. Because I was actually there. I was there the first day they were doing the new film. And I remember walking, because we were walking in Splash Mountain. We were like park hopping. This was my friends who worked there. We went from Epcot to Magic Kingdom. I was like, guys, I really want to go to Magic Kingdom for some reason. And as we're walking by the castle during the fireworks, I'm like, oh, sweet, the fireworks are happening. So we can just go on Splash Mountain, no lines. And I'm walking past and I'm like hearing this. I'm hearing Walt Disney speak. And I'm like, what's going on here? And we're walking past. My friend's like, oh yeah, that's the new fireworks show. I'm like, what? And it was too crowded at that point. I was like, oh man, well, I'll come back and see it. I haven't gone back to see it yet, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta go see it.
When you hear Roy speak, I mean, it is definitely like, whoa, like it's very, very powerful, I would say, especially when you know the backdrop and everything like that. I mean, it really is profound. And I wish that fans could have experienced that for the entire celebration. I wish that they really kind of could have leaned into that while also providing an experience that everybody can kind of enjoy and kind of reverberate around. Because here's the thing. I understand they want to appeal to the general audience, right? Who doesn't necessarily have the built-in nostalgia, built-in love, built-in history, whatever. You could have educated them, but the problem is that because they didn't they didn't cultivate that nostalgia, and they didn't kind of lean into it the right way, as you said before with Remember Dreams Come True, those same people who would have been your biggest advocates for the 50th anniversary now became your biggest detractors. And so what do they tell people when people ask them, hey, how was the 50th? They say, don't do it, it's not good. Whereas Disneyland leaned into these fans, and those fans told all kinds of people, you got to go to Disneyland for the 50th. It's amazing. And so that's why, it's like, that's why the 50th was just not well received, and nobody really, it didn't really impact people's decision making to visit Walt Disney World at this time. That's why they pulled ads for it, what is it, maybe 5-6 months after the debut of the 50th, because it was just like, it was so poorly received, and it could have been a lot better.
It could have been. And Ashton hit the nail on the head.
Golden statues around the park. What do you mean? We put so much effort into it.
Oh my gosh. And Ashton, you hit the nail on the head. I've never heard it, in all honesty, never heard it better well put than what you said. The kind of creation, the opening of Walt Disney World is like the same as Disneyland, but with more heartbreak. That is so on the money, dude. That is so on the money. Like, that's exactly what it is. I mean, you had Walt pass away before the opening. Obviously, heartbreaking. He was Walt Disney was on his deathbed talking to Roy, and he was talking about the Epcot project, and he was kind of envisioning it on the ceiling of his hospital bed, the map, and telling Roy complete my vision for this, right? I mean, heartbreaking stuff. And then Roy's his brother, who's not a creative guy. Roy is a very Bob Chapek-y guy. He is very much a finance guy. And he goes in and says, Roy says, Walt, I'm going to go ahead and complete your vision. So he's totally out of his element. Like,
he's totally out of his element.
Like, this is he's a finance guy, and he's going all out trying to complete his brother's dream. God, it's an amazing story, and they completely left it out. I'm so glad they added that into the fireworks show. Absolutely thrilled about that. They should have done that a long time ago. I mean, it really is a sin. And Ashton, I don't know, like, I was at Disneyland on July 17th, the anniversary, and for as long as I can remember, Disneyland on its birthday would always play Walt's opening day speech. Always. Every time I went, it was always there. This last July 17th, they didn't play it.
What?
They did not play it. They didn't play it. They did the birthday thing, all that. They left that out. I was so mad. So mad.
I'm surprised no one started screaming, play the speech. I'm surprised.
I think a lot of people expected it, and then when it didn't happen, I guess it was just like, that was disappointing. I think it was a little bit more like, there was definitely a void and a hole. Yeah, I will say, OG made such a stink about it. New York Post wrote about it. I believe Inside the Magic wrote about it, and all that kind of stuff, because it was like, but what? It's an important thing, It's
I would be pissed too.
Yeah.
The Disney company is talking about taking Walt's name out of Walt Disney World, apparently, supposedly.
Yeah. No, and
crazy.
And that's this is one of the reasons why OG and even I were very upset about it, because it was like, now you're stripping Walt from his company. Disney is now no longer a name; it's a brand.
They're going to take out the Walt Disney statue and put a statue of Mickey instead, probably.
Yeah.
They might. I don't know.
Or better, let's just put a golden statue of Chapek in the middle of the freaking
it'll be Kevin Feige holding Rocket Raccoon's hand.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. It's sad.
It is, and it's just like, no, don't. This is a bad move. Do not do this. It's people, that's part of even what appeals to so many people about Disneyland as distinct from Walt Disney World, because it was like, it's Walt's park, and
wait a minute, hold on. I'm so sorry to backtrack, but actually, no, Clownfish TV even shouted you out, Orange Grove. Was it because you were talking about the July 17th thing?
Yes.
That's the one, and you shared it with me.
I remember watching Clownfish. I was like, Orange Grove 55. I know who that is. I shared it with you. That's right. Now I remember. I'm so sorry. I had to continue.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. Hey, the channel got a lot of play there, which was very, very interesting, and OG deserves all the credit for it, absolutely, for sure, because I think it spoke to what a lot of fans were feeling. It was like they're removing Walt, they're stripping Walt, and like OG has said before, Walt is what made Disney's distinct from every other company. It still had that connection to this amazing man, and when you strip that out of it, whether it be for, I don't know, general audience purposes, ideological purposes, whatever, you could say why these things were done, but when you do that, it just becomes like every other company. It just becomes very separated from what I think Disney fans, what indentures that kind of loyalty to the Disney company.
Makes it special. You become essentially, when you take that Walt factor out, you kind of become Paramount or Viacom or any other company. It's the Walt thing, that story, that kind of like that guy, that scrappy guy that came to LA with like $30 in his pocket.
See, they'll love to use Walt when they want to use the story to make people feel something. But the moment you bring up how much you would hate some of the stuff they're doing, oh, who's Walt? Huh? What's going on? Praise the mouse. Exactly. Worship the mouse.
Yeah, 100%.
They make you find all the hidden Mickeys, so you make sure they're taking all the propaganda, like it's brainwashing. Whenever you think of hidden Mickeys, I think of like that scene in Clockwork Orange where his eyeballs are being widened and he's just like taking the Mickey.
Yes, taking the three circles. It's like, man. That's funny.
Ashton, it was an absolute pleasure having you on today. I love your passion, whether it be for Disney, Harry Potter. Everybody home, subscribe to her on YouTube, follow her on Twitter. She is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Links down below. But Ashton, if you can let everybody home know where they can find you on social media before we close it out today.
Of course. So my name is Ashton The Slytherin. Obviously, I mainly do Harry Potter stuff, but also talk a lot about horror movies, especially in the month of October. We'll be doing everything. It's going to be on Mickey's Halloween Party, Universal Horror Nights. I'm going to be discussing different horror movies. We're going to do a video every single day of October, basically talk about horror movies and all things Halloween. Cool. And then we'll get back into our Harry Potter Disney stuff, but basically all things nerdy is what I talk about. So YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Ashton the Slytherin. I am on Twitter as the Ashton Blaze if you want to see more of my ranting in real time.
Well, no, and I love how you branch out sometimes too, like with the Kim Kardashian and the Marilyn Monroe dress. I love that
I was
video.
just so angry about that. I had to say something. I was just like, I honestly think that's worse than burning the American flag at this point, because you can always get a new American flag. There's only one of the dress.
Yeah,
that's true. Ripped it.
It's a true point. Yeah, well, and that's it. I love that about you. I love how you have these opinions about a wide variety of different elements going on in our pop culture. I think it's fantastic. So you're doing a great job over there. We were so glad to have you on the channel.
Thank you.
Sure. You want to go ahead and find me? You can go ahead and do so right down there at Bash Guy. Go ahead and type it in; it should pop up. Like I said, I do appreciate you guys, supporting me by following me in that way. That's fantastic. It makes me feel good inside. So thank you very much for that. If you want to go ahead and see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
There you go.
Absolutely fantastic, Ashton. Thank you so much. And it's interesting because it's like, I think we could find some things we absolutely agree on. We could find some things we maybe disagree on. I just love having these kind of unique, let's say, diverse perspectives. I find it incredible. So thank you so much for sharing them with us. Honestly, it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me on.
100%. Thank you all for watching. Comment down below with all your opinions on representation, Disney parks, the changes going on in Disney parks, Harry Potter. A lot of talk about Harry Potter today, J.K. Rowling. Comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to Ashton the Slytherin on YouTube and follow her on Twitter. She is absolutely amazing. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.